Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today it is time for the Week 3 review of the 2025 UFL season. This week, in terms of the games played, man, we had one really weak game, but the other three games were all incredible, fun to watch games. Easily the best week of football we've had all season. With attendance and TV ratings, again, we continue this weird, awkward trend of it being the opposite of last year, as we have another overall solid week of attendance with another week of very mixed TV ratings. So, without further ado, let's get started with the first game of the week, the weakest, the Renegade Stallions. I made an entire video on this game. This game was a rough watch. Now, I'm only going to show the stats. Again, if you want to see that video, I'll put a little thing on the top right of your screen, a little eye icon. You can go click that video. To keep this one somewhat brief, essentially, it was two offenses that couldn't do essentially anything. But the Renegades were having an okay drive. They ended up fumbling the ball. Sal Cannella fumbled. The review was done and it was given to the Stallions because that was what was called in the field. Now, from the replays, it looks somewhat clear that the Stallions touched it while out of bounds, meaning it should have stayed Renegades' ball. Then, of course, the penultimate play was a fourth down play where the Stallions had it and they needed to score a touchdown to obviously try and take the lead, which they would, where they failed by throwing an interception. But the booth reviewed it fully after the play was done that there was a false start, and because of how the technicalities work, it being a dead ball foul and all that, Renegades were not able to decline the penalty, and the Stallions got a redo and were able to convert in the redo and score a touchdown. Very controversial game in terms of the Stallions winning both the fumble and that play. As I said before, the false start, it's really stupid how it is enforced when the play happened, but it still does make sense in a technical sense. But the fumble, yeah, Birmingham kind of got a very lucky break there. Overall, though, this was the worst game of the season, and I would argue the worst game in the UFL's history. It's short, but important history. Only like the Stallions Roughnecks blowout from last year or the championship game really, in my opinion, come close. As well as it was a technical close game, it was really more so two inept offenses versus two incredible defenses. And it's no disrespect to either defense, because they're both still legit units. But if you watch this game, you know what I mean. This was more so offenses just not doing anything. Ground game continuing to be a massive issue in the overall league as its entirety, as aside from the first couple weeks Jacob Sailors, we have not seen a single team really have a good ground game, and that trend continued in this one. So let's move on to the second game and the first of the three really good ones, the Roughnecks Showboats. I know, it's shocking. The Roughnecks actually won a game. This is one of the biggest surprises of the entire year, is seeing Houston actually pull off the W, but they did. Now, Memphis once again had this incredible final drive where it looked like they were finally going to pull it off. They scored the touchdown, went for two for the win, and they failed it. This game was a weird one in terms of the quarterback play from really both teams, because Anthony Brown once again started and once again had a horrid stat line. Again, 8 of 15 is actually really good for him, which is sad, but that's true. But 40 yards and 8 completions is horrendous. So he deservedly got benched again for Nolan Henderson, who, unlike last week, came in this time and just balled out. 10 completions on 11 attempts, 1 touchdown, 80 yards. Again, still not the best yards per completion, but still a very solid game. And of course, on the ground, he had 3 rushes for 15 yards. Once again, was able to he was the reason this team won the game for the Roughnecks side. As for the Showboats, EJ Perry was actually having a very solid game. That final stat line you see, 13 20, 131, 1 TD, 2 interceptions, that's not the real stat line for most of the game. For most of the game, you have to eliminate those 2 interceptions. He was playing really solid. But then in back-to-back drives, he threw an interception and then a pick six. And then he got benched for Troy Williams. EJ Perry continues to show why he's still not a full-time starter despite all the high moments he's had both years with the Panthers and, of course, so far the Showboats. He can give you some great drives and great play, but he will make mistakes, and those mistakes essentially cost his team the game. Now, T. Will on the ground showed some incredible promise for this team, being able to run the ball a lot more than he was able to pretty much at any point last season. This was very much reminiscent of the Mahler's T-Will that we didn't see last year, where he was able to use his legs to run for more yards than his running backs. So we talked about before, the Garrett Groshek, Madre London combo with the 2023 Maulers was a really disappointing one, and T-Will ended up having to do basically most of the ground game himself. So it's going to be very interesting to see who ends up being the starter for Week 4 for the Showboats, because both of them have their highs and both have their lows, the two quarterbacks. But overall, this is a very fun game to watch. Again, the Showboats, if you're going to watch one game every week, I would recommend the Showboats, because they're the only team that has had 3 consecutive fun games to watch. Now, the third game was the Brahmas Panthers. This was game of the week and probably game of the year to most people. 26-23 is the final score, and this had a lot of drama. Of course, the final play is the big one. D. Strong had a chance to tie the game with a 50-plus yard field goal. He kicked it. It was no good. The Panthers held on to win the game. Now, the only reason that score was even that close was because Bryce Perkins, on a third down where they just had to run the ball and just kick a field goal, he threw a back-breaking pick six. But the Panthers were able to drive, get a field goal, and were able to just barely hang on to win this game. Danny Etling did start, but he got hurt almost immediately after he made a really solid play on it with his legs, and now he's on IR. They had to get a replacement. But with Bryce Perkins, almost 200 yards passing. Again, if you eliminate the pick six, he had an incredible game. It's just that pick six really hurts his stats. Because if you eliminate the pick six, of course, that's 17 of 22 passing attempts for almost 200 yards. He had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Again, the biggest thing about this is even though his yards per carry was really low for a quarterback at 3, he actually was running the ball. This is what I've been preaching for the past 2 weeks that this team has been missing. That's the issue with Perkins is he wasn't playing like Bryce Perkins. Yes, there's always the issue of him hurdling, which he did it again, and how he could get hurt. But this offense needs him to run the ball to be effective. That helps open the door for a Jaden Sheridan massive 43-yard touchdown run. That's what helps open the door for a ground game that isn't putrid. Because again, even though they had that great run, overall this was still a weak ground game performance by the Panthers. If you let Perkins continue to run, you're going to help that ground game out. As for the Brahmas, Wade Phillips was not in the sideline. He was out with an illness. A.J. Smith, of course, resigned, and man, this offense looked a lot better without him. The offense just improved immensely. It still wasn't insane. I think people are kind of slightly, and I mean very slightly, overhyping this offense. Again, eliminate the 29-yard rush that McFarland had. They really still don't have a great ground game. And Mond, I know he's technically in like PFF grades not the worst quarterback in the league, but this was another one of those games where it was like, yeah, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great. Which, again, granted how quarterbacks have been playing this year, you'll take that, honestly. Overall, though, the Brahmas, they need to try and get one more win. The fact is, at this point in the season, it's almost a guarantee they're going to miss the playoffs. When the second to worst team in your conference is 2-1 and you're 0-3, that hurts. As for Michigan, this was a much-needed win. Helps you continue to have that lead on the Roughnecks and the Showboats for that second playoff spot, and hell, maybe even get that first spot, depending on if Houston pulls out the upset against Birmingham. So, that was this game. Very fun game of the year. And then the big one, the Defenders, Battlehawks, the battle of the unbeaten teams. The Defenders ended up winning. The final score does not indicate how close this game was. Again, the score was much closer. I mean, as you can see, the Defenders put up 9 points in the fourth quarter, which included a field goal essentially like right at the end of the game. So the real final score, like I talked with the Panthers Showboats game where I eliminated the pick six because that was like one of the last plays of the game in week 1. This is very similar. The real final score was like 24-15, so a one-score game. Biggest storyline is Manny Wilkins. Man, did he look awful in this game. Now, Jordan Ta'amu didn't really look better. Jordan Ta'amu had one huge play to Ty Scott, who is sadly on IR now, so that's a massive blow for the Defenders' offense. The Defenders' running game, still non-existent. Again, Deion Jackson had one really long rush, and he was overall the best running back on the team. Abram Smith had a ton of carries. Now, I did see flashes of the old Abram Smith, but again, 23 attempts for barely 50 yards is a horrid stat line to look at. Ta'amu had touchdowns, but that's because they threw the ball a ton. 37 attempts, still isn't accurate. Again, I know people are going to say drop passes. Yes, there was drop passes on both. There was multiple times he could have had balls intercepted. Multiple times where his receivers could have caught it. And there was a lot of inaccurate passes. The Jordan Ta'amu special right there. But he wasn't the worst quarterback. That was Manny Wilkins. Biggest storyline, though, in all honesty, was Jacob Saylor's not doing anything on the ground. 7 carries for a long of 3 yards. That is immaculate run defense by the Defenders to stop him to that. Again, when the 2 leading rushers are the quarterback and a wide receiver, you know you did your job as a defense. So, congrats to the Defenders' defense. It is the best unit in the league. I think we can all agree with that now. The Battlehawks had 4 total turnovers. Manny Wilkins fumbled the ball a couple times, lost one of them. Almost a 12-minute disparity when it comes to time and possession. Just a really rough one. Again, this game was meant to be a real test for both teams because the Defenders had yet to play a conference opponent. The Battlehawks had yet to play a good team. And, well, DC passed with flying colors. St. Louis, not so much. Now, as for the attendance, we're going to look at it a bit differently this week. We're going to show the overall attendance for this season and then compare it to the averages last season. This week was honestly a very solid week of attendance, all things considered. The Birmingham game, I was fully expecting it to be about 9,000. Now, the 10,000 average they had last season has a big asterisk of the AJ McCarron game had like 14K and really shot up that average. Because aside from that, they had a couple of games that were under 8,000 and then like another couple that were at 10K. So them hitting 10K this game, I fully expected this to be about a 9,000, maybe even like 8,500 number. Seeing it be 10K, I thought that was a solid number. Memphis, is it still an objectively poor number? Yes, there's no arguing that. Sub 5K is almost inexcusable. Is it still a near 400% improvement than week 1? Yes. And is it despite them being 0-2 heading in this game? Yes. Do I think their next home game is going to be as good as this one? I doubt it. I hope so, but I doubt it. Maybe the fact they're in fun games will help them out, but again, it's weird. The Memphis number, it's an improvement, so you got to be happy about that, but it's still a horrid number. The Michigan number, that was the best number of the week. And I don't think anyone can really argue that. The fact that we not only saw them hit 10K last week, which was already higher than they've ever had before, but to see them improve that after losing at home by almost 1,000 is insanely impressive. That was a great attendance number, seeing them hit 11K. Because that was legit improvement, and you felt it. That was what you wanted to see. The fact that they are now up to that number, I think most people are going to agree that so far this season, they've been the best attendance team when you consider what was the expectation. Again, yes, we all know St. Louis is going to have the best number overall. But when you look at it from what was the expectation versus what happened, no team really even comes close to Michigan. Arlington to a degree so far, but Michigan hitting not only 10K once, but twice, with the second one being 11K. If you had told that to people before the season, they would have said that there's no way, they just don't buy it. I said it multiple times. I thought Michigan's attendance was going to be better than last season, but this is really good for them. St. Louis, they were down about 2,000. I know there was like a Cardinals game or something on. Hopefully they don't drop below 30K, because that would be, a weak number for St. Louis standards. Hopefully they can stick around this 30K, 30 plus K. Again, for this being a massive rivalry game against DC, you kind of were hoping and expecting it to be higher than this. Again, it's still St. Louis. It's still an incredible number. It's just if we're being objective and we're viewing this like I've always viewed it, which is comparing their attendance from last season and the weeks prior to this week, that is a weaker number. It's not a weak number, but it's just a weaker number, right? Overall, 2 games. One really exceeded my expectation with Michigan. One exceeded my expectation to a degree with Birmingham. One, still an awful number, but still an improvement, Memphis. And then St. Louis, still an incredible number, but just not a incredible number when it comes to something like improvement. Overall, though, attendance, very solid week. There's really not much you can say negative about this week in attendance. Because, again, Memphis, at this point, we kind of expect Memphis to be really bad in attendance numbers, and we're just kind of waiting to see if they end up keeping their team next season, but that's Memphis. TV ratings, once again, very mixed. Now, the overall attendance we have, or TV ratings, you have 680 on the Friday Night Football game, basically 300K for the Houston-Memphis game. Then we have 720 for the Michigan-San Antonio game and 970 for the DC-St. Louis game with a huge peak. The ESPN game was rough. Now, this has a lot of things you have to look at it. Number one, you had 2 0-2 teams playing each other. That's a massive problem, right? You had 2 teams that already have the worst attendance in the league playing against each other. Massive negative. It's in the stadium that has the least amount of people in it, Memphis. Another massive negative. It was, again, on ESPN, not a major network, which honestly I think is a good thing, because this game on a major network would still probably put up poor ratings, but this is rough. Again, this was a really fun game if you watched it or were there, but yikes. Going head-to-head against the Masters on Saturday also hurt, especially when McIlroy's, the guy, the story in golf was him trying to get that Grand Slam, which to a degree also hurt the Sunday games. I mean, let's call it like it is. If there was no Masters, that DC St. Louis game's hitting over 1 million easy. But the Houston-Memphis game, look, you can blame the Masters, you can blame 0-2 and 0-2. That's a really bad number. I mean, that is the weakest number of the season. You're hitting a number that was less than the FS1 Battlehawks game. That's a problem. I don't care who's playing on FS1. You should not be lower than FS1 and ESPN2 ratings. And again, ESPN2, again, these are rounded to the, nearest 100,000th. But last year's ESPN2 game rounded to 300,000. So you're matching an ESPN2 game, that's rough. that Friday night football game. Again, like I've talked about before, it depends on what you fully believe. If you fully agree with what James Larson has said about Friday nights, then this is still technically a good number. If you don't, this is a weaker number. Again, it's better than last week, but so far all three games, when you round them, have rounded to 700,000. So it's like, if there's a difference of less than 40K between them, it's roughly the same each week, which some would argue is honestly a good thing, that they're all roughly the same instead of going down and down and down, but I still want these numbers to be higher. I was fully expecting a 700K one this weekend, or this week, past week, so I think this is still a slight disappointment, but to each their own. The ABC games, thankfully we had some rebound. Now, the ABC game last week, of course, averaged to about 600,000 when you round it. This time we got 7 and 1. Now, the DC St. Louis game, again, like I said, let's call it like it is. No Master Sunday. This game hits over 1 million. The Michigan San Antonio game probably hits over 800,000. Now, with that, Michigan San Antonio still would have liked that to be a bit higher, but, we take it. It's still better than it. Because last season, again, ABC averaged 1 million across the season, and Fox averaged 900,000. So, yes, I know some people say that, when you go to the second year, the TV ratings always go down. We did see that with the USFL. But this is definitely a weird one. Again, the DC St. Louis game, really solid TV ratings for the week. But this is a number that last season would have just been, a basic ABC number. So I do think you have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt that, these TV ratings, while I am going to call them mixed in the thumbnail because they are kind of mixed in the sense that you have a couple really decent ones and a couple, one really poor one. Overall, I would still say that so far this season, it's been the opposite of last year. Instead of TV ratings being a lot better than expected, they are worse than expected. And instead of attendance being even worse than we already thought they were going to suck, they've actually been solid. So it's been a weird season so far when it comes to those, but that'll do it. This has been Zom Fox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as we upload any videos. Again, I am probably, like I said in the video yesterday, I'm probably going to be appearing in a couple of things this week, which I'll post, community posts for and all that. I'm planning on, I don't know for sure if I'm going to post a weekly video this time because of all the extra things I'm doing, but I probably will, so be on the lookout for that video tomorrow, as well as, of course, the Player of the Week YouTube short that comes out. I am probably already decided on what 2 games I will be streaming this week due to things going on. I'm probably only going to have time for the Battlehawks game in terms of the weekend, so I'm probably not going to have a community vote on that, but I will post that to the community heroes. Again, if you want to become a community member, it's as low as 99 cents a month. You get an exclusive monthly video, which this month, and it might even be posted by the time this video is posted, or it'll be later today, I'm doing my NBA and NHL playoff predictions, my bracket for both leagues, so that is a community member exclusive video. You also get 6 team emojis, exclusive community posts, a badge icon next to your name in the comments and all that. And if you become a community hero for $2.99, you get to vote on one of the games we live stream every week, aside from when there's a tank bowl and this specific weekend because of what's going on and when it's going on. So think about that. And again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you have a great night.